back to the first time you changed something about yourself just to get someone's approval. Not because you wanted to, but because you needed them to be okay with you. How old were you? Because for some of us, that memory goes way back, way further than we probably want to even admit. And that's what I want to talk about today. Not to make this heavy, but because I think that if we're going to stop chasing validation, we have to understand where we even learned to chase it in the first place. So let's go back, way back into time. Welcome to the Always On Mute podcast, where we know not everyone was born with a mic in their hand or a megaphone in their mouth, but we still have something to say, because quiet is still a voice. Welcome to the Always On Mute podcast. I'm Antonia, and this is where quiet minds speak with intention. Today we are talking about the quiet cost of chasing validation and what it really takes to come back to yourself. Nobody is born needing everybody's approval. A baby does not come out into the world wondering if people are okay with the sound of their cry. They cry because they need something. They cry loudly. They cry without apology. And then we grow up. And the world starts responding to us. And the world has preferences. Smile, the people light up. Be quiet, and maybe the room feels easier. Say the right thing, and the tension drops. Say the wrong thing, and now everybody is looking at you funny. Be too much, and people pull away. Be too honest, and oh, you're just difficult. Be too quiet, and now something must be wrong with you. We learned this very early. As children, validation is not just about wanting attention. Sometimes it becomes safety, because when you are a child, you depend on the adults around you. So you start paying attention. You learn what gets warmth. You learn what gets silence. You learn what gets smile. Right? You learn what gets disappointment, and you know your mama's look. So it's like, right? So before you even understand what you're doing, you start adjusting. That's not insecurity, and it certainly isn't weakness. That's a child trying to survive the environment that they're in. The problem is that some of us never knew when to stop. The lesson that was supposed to be temporary became permanent. The thing we learned as children followed us straight into adulthood and beyond. And nobody pulled us to the side and said, you can let go now. That was then. Nobody said, you don't have to keep performing to be loved. Nobody said, you can trust yourself without everybody co-signing it. So we kept going. Still adjusting, still proving, still trying to be the version of ourselves that made everybody else comfortable. And validation. Validation does not look the same for everybody. Sometimes it starts at home. At home, validation can look like being the agreeable child, the child who does not want to disappoint anybody, the child who does not want to go against the grain, the child who learns, let me just go along with the program because it's easier that way. And let's be real, as children, sometimes you just don't want to, you don't have much of a choice. You are living in someone else's house, following someone else's rules, trying not to do anything wrong, trying not to upset anybody, and trying to stay in the good standing with the people who are taking care of you. So you learn to adjust. You learn what makes the house peaceful. You learn what creates tension. You learn when to speak. You learn when to be quiet. You learn when it is better to just leave things alone. And when you grow up, the pattern is still sitting there. I think about how even after I moved out and paying rent somewhere else, I would still call my mother for approval on certain things. And it's not because I couldn't make a decision. It's not because I wasn't an adult. Clearly I was grown. I was paying rent somewhere. I had responsibilities. But there was still this part of me that wanted to know, am I making the right choice? And I think a lot of us do that, especially with our parents. We don't want to disappoint the people we love. We want them to be proud. We want them to feel like they raised us well. And the funny thing is, a lot of parents would probably say, oh, baby, I just want you to be happy. But meanwhile, we're over here trying to figure out how to make them happy. We're guessing. We are making decisions based on what we think they would approve of. And sometimes they didn't ask us to do any of that. But that's how deep validation can run. It doesn't always look like begging for approval. Sometimes it looks like needing permission long after technically having the freedom to choose whatever you want to do. And then with friends, it can look similar. You go along with what everybody else wants to do. Not because you're excited about it, not even because that's what you would have chosen, but because your choice might not be the popular choice. And nobody wants to feel like the odd one out. So you go. You stay longer than you would prefer to stay. You spend energy you didn't even know that you had. Because you can't put energy on layaway. So you laugh along, you participate, you act like you're fine. Meanwhile, your whole social battery is blinking red. Red alert. And for introverts, that is real. Because sometimes we are not just going along with an activity. We are spending energy we already knew needed to be saved. But we went along anyway because we want to belong. We want to feel included. We don't want people to think that we're boring. We don't want people to stop inviting us. So we tell ourselves, oh, just go. It won't be so bad. Just do it. Don't make it a thing. And little by little, we start trading our own needs just to feel like we're part of the group. That is a cost. Even if nobody sees it, it is a cost. At school, validation may have looked like being the child who always get good grades. Not because learning was always joyful, but because good grades made everything feel safer. A report card full of A's meant people were proud. And it meant approval was always guaranteed, at least for a little while. Or maybe it looked like being the quiet one who watched how everybody moved. You studied the room, you figured out the rules, you learned what made people laugh. You learned what made people ignore you. You learned what made you acceptable, digestible. And introverts, we can be very good at that because we were already watching, listening, studying the room before we even opened our mouths. We became fluent in reading people, and somewhere along the way, we started using that skill to edit ourselves. Before we even showed up fully, we had already cut pieces of ourselves down. Now work. Work is a big one. At work, validation can look like overcompensating, going in early, staying in late, working on the weekends when it's not even required, checking emails as soon as you wake up and right before you go to bed, being connected to the device like it's a part of you, like it's your hip, an extension of your hip. Always available, always reachable, always making sure nothing slips through the crack. And we tell ourselves that we're just being responsible, we're being professional, we're being a team player. We are doing what we promised to do is what we tell ourselves. And yes, sometimes some of it could be true, but sometimes underneath all of that is another question. Do they see my value? Do they even know that I'm dependable? Do they know that I'm doing enough? Do they know that I'm going above and beyond? Do they know that I belong here? Do they know I'm not one of the people just doing the bare minimum? And that gets tiring because you can find yourself going above and beyond while watching other people just do the bare minimum and getting by without a care in the world. And somehow you still feel like you have something to prove. That is one of the traps of validation. It will have you believing that if you just do more, give more, sacrifice more, be more available, then maybe you'll finally feel secure. But if I have to keep proving myself just to feel safe, then am I really safe? Or am I just tired? And then validation can show up in communities too. Mentorship groups, business groups, church groups, creative spaces, places where everybody is supposed to be growing. And at first, that validation can feel helpful. You want your mentor to notice your effort, You want someone ahead of you to say, yes, girl, you on the right track. You want to know that you are not wasting your time. You want to know that you are not wasting your energy. You're not crazy for believing in whatever it is that you're building. And there is nothing wrong with wanting guidance. There's nothing wrong with wanting feedback in real time. There's nothing wrong with wanting to learn from people who may be further along. But guidance is one thing. Waiting for someone to give you permission to trust yourself, that is something totally different. And in communities, sometimes we are not only looking for validation from the mentor or the leader. Sometimes we're looking for it from the people beside us, so our fellow mentees. The people who are building too, the people who are in the same group, the same room, the same space. You want to know you're doing something right. You want someone to notice your progress. You want someone to say, I see you. And in a perfect world, that should happen. Because if we're in the same space where everybody is supposed to be growing and learning, we should be able to cheer each other on. We should be able to say, you're doing really well. I'm so proud of you, without feeling threatened. We should be able to celebrate each other without acting like somebody else's progress takes something away from us. But unfortunately, that is not always how people see it. Sometimes people see you doing well and they say nothing. Not because they don't see it. They see it. But maybe your progress reminds them of what they haven't done yet. Maybe they're dealing with their own insecurity. Maybe they're trying to find their own rhythm. Maybe they don't know how to clap for somebody else while they're still frustrated with themselves. And that may not even be about you. But if you are chasing validation, their silence can mess with you. You start wondering, am I doing this right? Is this good enough? Did they even notice? Should I slow down? Should I change? Should I be doing something different? And that is how validation gets you stuck, right? It gets you stuck in this space of questioning your own self. Because now you are measuring your movement by other people's reactions. And sometimes those reactions will never come. Not because you're not doing well, but because not everybody can clap while they are still trying to find their own rhythm. That is something I had to learn. I had to stop waiting for people in the same room to confirm what I already knew I was building. Because sometimes validations get you nowhere but stuck. Waiting keeps you stuck. Looking around keeps you stuck. Needing everybody to understand keeps you stuck. At some point, you have to keep going anyway, clapped or not, mentioned or not, approved or not, because the work still matters. The vision still matters. And your growth, it still counts when nobody says a word. This is the part that isn't discussed. Chasing validation is exhausting. It's quietly exhausting because it never ends. You get the approval and it feels good for a moment. Then the moment passes. Now you need it again from the next person and the other person, somebody in the next room, right? For the next thing that you do. And for a while, you stop knowing what you even want because you have now been so focused on what other people want from you. You start asking, will they like this? Will they approve of this? Will this make sense to them? Will this make them proud? Will they even understand? And those questions get so loud that one day you realize you have not asked yourself a very simple question in a long time. What do I want? Not what makes sense to everybody else. Not what will look good. Not what will make people proud. Not what will keep the room comfortable. What do I want? That question can feel strange when you have spent years trying to be acceptable. And I started thinking about how many of us have made major life decisions based on what would look right. What career would make the family proud? What relationship would make sense? What path would get the nod? What version of success would make us look like we were doing life correctly? Then we get there and wonder why we feel empty. You wonder why? Sometimes it's because the goal was never really ours. Sometimes we did not choose the life. We chose the approval attached to it. And that is a different thing. For me, one of the biggest costs was time, especially with work. There was a point where it felt like the computer was attached to me, like literally. Even when I was not physically at work, work was still with me, on the phone, in my email, in my head, in the background of my life, right? I would wake up and check emails because I didn't want to miss anything. And that sounds responsible. And in some ways, maybe it can be responsible or look that way, but it can also cross a line because now your mind really never get rest. You are off, but you're not really off. You're at home, but your work is there too. You're on vacation, but the laptop came with you. And I tell you, my laptop went with me, my work laptop went with me many places. And when I look back, I can see that I was giving away time I would never get back. Time to rest, time to think, time to create, time to build something of my own, time to simply be a person outside of what I produced. That's the part we don't always calculate. We think the cost of validation is just emotional, but sometimes the cost is your time, your energy, your peace, your creativity, your relationship with yourself, your ability to hear what your own life is asking from you. Because when you are constantly trying to prove that you are dependable, capable, loyal, useful, responsible, and worthy, you can lose sight of where your actual life went. And I had to ask myself, what am I really trying to prove? And who am I proving it to? Because at some point, going above and beyond stops being excellence and starts becoming self-abandonment, especially when it becomes the expectation, especially when people start benefiting from the fact that you don't have boundaries, especially when you are giving your best energy to things that cannot love you back. And I don't say that to be dramatic. I say that because it is true. A job can appreciate you. A community can appreciate you. People can appreciate you. But if you keep giving all your energy away, who is taking care of you? That was a real wake-up call for me. Another cause is that you can lose your relationship with yourself. And that is harder to explain because it doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like needing 3 opinions before you make a decision. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining yourself. Sometimes it looks like feeling guilty for wanting something different. Sometimes it looks like being successful on the outside, but disconnected on the inside. Sometimes it looks like having an idea, a desire, a pull, a vision, but waiting so long for somebody else to confirm it that the excitement starts fading. And now, the thing that you are so excited about, it feels heavy. Not because the thing was wrong, but because you kept holding it up for everybody else's approval. That is the cost, not the exhaustion, not just people pleasing, not just overthinking. The real cost is that you can become a stranger to yourself while trying to be acceptable to everybody else. So how does this pattern break? It doesn't break overnight. Not because one day you just wake up and suddenly say, I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't even think that's realistic. We're human. We care. We're wired to care. We want to be loved. We want to be understood. We want to be seen. But there is a difference between wanting to be seen and needing to be approved before you move. For me, it started with a question I could not unask. Who told me I needed permission? Not in an angry way. I was just curious. Like, wait a minute. Who said I needed permission to trust myself? Who said I needed everybody to agree before I could move? Who said I needed to be understood by everybody before I could be at peace with my own decision? And when I started tracing it back, I found moments, specific moments, a comment someone made when I was young, a time I was excited about something and the room did not match my energy. Times when my ideas were minimized. Times when I learned to minimize myself before anybody else had a chance to do it. So the validation chasing was not random. It had roots, deep roots. And seeing that did not magically erase the pattern. But it helped me separate myself from it. I could look at it and say, that happened to me, but that is not who I am. And that matters. Because sometimes we call something our personality when it is really a survival strategy that has been running too long. We say, I'm just indecisive. I can't make up my mind. I'm just too sensitive. I'm just not confident enough. I just need reassurance. But sometimes, no. Sometimes we learn to doubt ourselves because doubting ourselves felt safer than disappointing somebody else. That's a different thing. And for me, that question started showing up everywhere. With family, it sounded like, why do I still feel like I need approval for a decision I am grown enough to make? With friends, it sounded like, why am I saying yes to something I already know will drain me? With work, it sounded like, why do I feel guilty for logging off when the workday is over? With community, it sounded like, why am I waiting for somebody else to tell me I'm doing well before I allow myself to believe it? And those questions did not come all at once. They came gradually. But once I started to ask them, I could not ignore the answers. Because the truth is, I had built a habit of proving I was responsible, proving I was dependable, proving I could be counted on, proving I wasn't lazy, proving I wasn't difficult, proving I was worthy of the seat I was sitting in. And listen, there is nothing wrong with being responsible. There's nothing wrong with doing good work. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make the people you love proud. There's nothing wrong with learning from mentors. There's nothing wrong with being part of a community. But there is a difference between doing something from love and doing it from fear. There's a difference between excellence and overcompensating. There is a difference between commitment and losing yourself. There's a difference between receiving guidance and needing permission. There's a difference between being teachable and handing somebody else the authority to decide if you are enough. And I had to learn that difference. Another shift was learning to catch the loop in real time. Because there is a moment, and once you notice it, you will recognize it. There's a moment where you do something, and before you even decide how you feel about it, you are already looking around for somebody else to tell you it was okay. Start catching that moment. Not to beat yourself up, just to notice it. And ask yourself, what do I think about this? How do I feel about this? Am I proud of this? Does this align with who I am becoming? Would I still choose this if nobody clapped? Would I still keep going if nobody mentioned my progress? Would I still believe in this if the room stayed quiet? And that may feel uncomfortable because when you are used to needing outside approval, your own answer can feel too small. Like it does not count yet. But practicing it builds trust. You learn to trust yourself. Your voice gets stronger when you use it, even with yourself, especially with yourself. For me, one of the clearest changes happened in corporate America. Every time I left one job and moved to another, I tried to leave certain bad behaviors and habits behind. And when I say bad work, or bad habit, bad behavior. I don't mean bad work ethic. I believe in doing good work. I do. I believe in showing up. I mean the unhealthy habits, working way beyond the hours, taking the work computer on vacation, feeling like I had to be reachable and on at all times, checking in when I was supposed to be resting and offline, letting work follow me into spaces where it didn't belong. I had to learn that being unavailable outside of work hours did not make me irresponsible. It made me healthy. It made me human. It meant I understood that rest is not something I had to earn after I burned myself out. Rest is a part of how I stay whole. And that did not happen overnight. It happened gradually. But over time, I made a choice to have a healthier relationship with work. Work-life balance is a thing, right? I do what is required and I do it very well. But I stopped offering pieces of myself that were never meant to be a part of the agreement. And that changed something for me. Because the time that I used to give away so easily to work, to church, to communities, to places where I felt like I had been proving myself, I now have that time back. I took all that time back. And now I can repurpose it into my passion projects, into my growth, into the things that I am building, into the work that actually feels connected to who I am becoming. That is a part of what happens when you stop chasing validation. You do not just get your confidence back. You get back your time. You get back your energy. You get access to yourself again. And another shift was learning how to receive feedback without letting it become a verdict. Because external validation does not always come wrapped in encouragement. Sometimes it comes as criticism. Sometimes it comes as correction. Sometimes it comes as somebody questioning your idea, your timing, your voice, your method, your ability. And if you are still chasing validation, that criticism can stop you. It can make you second guess something that you are excited about. It can make you put down an idea that was still growing. It can make you think, maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I'm not qualified. Maybe I'm not polished enough. Maybe I'm not loud enough. Maybe I'm not whatever enough. But feedback is information. It isn't always instruction. Criticism is not always truth. Sometimes people are speaking from their own limitations. Sometimes they do not see the vision because it wasn't given to them. Sometimes they are trying to help, but their words still shrink you. And sometimes the very thing they are questioning is the thing that you are supposed to keep building. That is where discernment matters. Because not every correction is rejection, but not every opinion deserves authority over your life either. I had to learn that I could respect a mentor without making that mentor the owner of my confidence. I could listen, I could learn, I could receive what was useful, but I did not have to hand over the final say about who I am becoming. And with fellow members, I had to learn something else. Silence doesn't mean you are not growing. Just because someone does not cheer does not mean you're not doing well. Just because someone doesn't mention your progress doesn't mean your progress isn't real. Just because someone does not validate your work does not mean the work has no value. Sometimes the people are quiet because they are dealing with their own insecurity. Sometimes people are quiet because your growth makes them uncomfortable. It took me such a long time to realize that. Sometimes people are quiet because they are still trying to figure out their own path. And sometimes people are simply quiet because they are not your audience. That does not make it bad, but it also does not make them the measuring stick. And I think that one of the biggest things for me, there came a time when I realized I was not looking for advice anymore. I was looking for permission to trust myself and trust my voice. And once I saw that, I had to stop, because chasing validation was not moving me forward. It was keeping me stuck waiting, stuck second guessing, stuck looking around, stuck wondering whether I was allowed to keep building what I already knew mattered to me. And I decided I did not want to live like that anymore. Now, another part of this is grief. And I don't want to skip over that, because letting go of validation is not always this happy, free, I don't care what anyone thinks moment. Sometimes it hurts, because some of us are still chasing validation from people who are no longer in our lives, or people who were never able to give it, or a version of a situation that had long passed. Still trying to prove something to a teacher who made us feel small back then. Still trying to get acknowledgement from a parent who did not know how to give it. Still trying to be celebrated by people who cannot celebrate us. Still performing for a crowd that left years ago. And letting go is grief. Real grief. Because there's a part of you that still wishes they had seen you. Still wishes they had encouraged you. Still wishes that they had said, I'm proud of you. Still wishes they had made you feel safe enough to be fully yourself. And at some point, you have to mourn the version of the story where you get what you needed from the people who should have given it. Then you have to stop. Stop making your life a waiting room for approval that may never come. I'm going to repeat that. Stop making your life a waiting room for approval that may never come. That is not small. That is not easy, but it is necessary. Now, this is the part that I want you to hold on to. When people talk about not needing validation anymore, they usually make it sound like freedom right away. And yes, that is freedom. Oh, there is relief. But first, it can get louder before it gets quieter. Because when you stop performing for everybody else, you have to sit with your own voice. And if you have been ignoring that voice for a long time, it is going to have some things to say. Things you have been pushing down, ignoring, questions you've been avoiding, truths you did not want to admit, even to yourself. The first thing that happens when the chase ends is that you meet yourself. Hi, I'm so-and-so. Hey, what's up? Maybe for the first time as an adult. And that meeting may not be comfortable. Because now you have to hear what you actually like, what you actually want, what you actually no longer want, what you have been tolerating, what you have been calling fine because it was easier than telling the truth. But you need that meeting, because you cannot build a real life with a self you refuse to meet. What comes after that is not confidence the way the world sells confidence. It's not always loud. It's not always bold. It's not walking into every room like you own it. Sometimes it's quieter than that. It's a settled knowing. You start making decisions differently. You stop measuring every choice against what people will think. Not because you don't care about people, but because you stop confusing people's opinions with truth. Their opinion is information. It is not instruction. You start showing up differently. You stop editing yourself before you even speak. You stop watering down your ideas before you share them. You stop apologizing for taking up space before anybody even asked you to shrink. You speak, and then you let it land where it lands. And no, everybody will not understand you. They won't. Everybody will not approve. They won't. Every room will not know what to do with you. Some rooms won't. But you stop making that the measure for your worth. Your boundaries become clearer, not harsh, clearer, because you no longer need people to be happy with you more than you need to be honest with yourself. And some relationships may shift. Some may fall away. That doesn't mean you did something wrong. Sometimes it just means the role you are playing no longer fits. And yes, that can hurt, even when it is right. Because sometimes we outgrow the version of ourselves that made certain relationships work. But the relationships that remain and the new ones that come will have a better chance of being real. Not built on who you became so somebody would stay, but built on who you actually are. And I want to be clear. Stopping the chase does not mean you stop growing. It does not mean you stop receiving feedback. It does not mean you become unreachable. It does not mean nobody can tell you anything. It means you are no longer empty without external confirmation. You receive a compliment and enjoy it without needing it to define you. You can receive criticism and sort through what is useful without letting it destroy you. You can be corrected without falling apart. You can be misunderstood without disappearing. You can be disliked without abandoning yourself. And now, the validation I care more about is not the kind that comes from everybody clapping. It is the kind that comes from knowing I kept a promise to myself. Did I stay consistent with my growth? Did I honor what I said mattered to me? Did I protect the time I said I needed? Did I stop abandoning myself just to keep somebody else comfortable? Did I keep building even when nobody mentioned it? Did I trust the vision when nobody else validated it? That kind of validation feels different. It's quieter. It doesn't need an audience. It does not always come with applause, but it feels solid because it comes from within. And when you begin to trust that, you stop needing every room to confirm who you are. You already know. Your foundation is no longer based on what somebody else decides about your worth that day. That is power, quiet power, the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that just moves. You did not start chasing validation because something was wrong with you. You started because you were human, because you wanted to feel safe, because somewhere along the way, the world taught you that approval was how safety felt. At home, with family, with friends, at work, in communities, in mentorship spaces, in rooms where you wanted to belong, in spaces where you wanted to be seen as responsible, dependable, valuable, enough. But you are not that child anymore. You are not that younger version of yourself who had to go along with the program just to feel safe. You are not required to keep proving yourself in rooms where your growth isn't always visible. You're not required to shrink your vision because somebody else does not know how to celebrate it. You are allowed to choose differently now. You are allowed to love your family without needing every decision approved. You are allowed to care about your friends without abandoning your needs. You are allowed to do good work without giving your whole life to the job. You are allowed to be part of a community without needing the community to validate every single step. You are allowed to respect mentors without making them the final authority over your confidence. You are allowed to be dependable without being depleted. And the safety you are chasing from the outside, you can start building that from the inside now. Not in one day, not in one big dramatic moment, but one quiet decision at a time. One decision where you check in with yourself first. One moment where you tell the truth. One moment where you stop asking for permission to be who you already are. One moment where you keep going even when no one claps. That is how the chase slows down. That is how you come back to yourself. Thank you for staying with me today on this very important episode. This was not a light conversation, but I think that it was a necessary one because so many of us have spent years trying to be approved, accepted, chosen, understood, and celebrated, when what we really needed was to come back to ourselves. If this episode made you think of someone, share it with them. And I want to ask you this. Where in your life have you been chasing validation the longest? Let me know in the comments below. And what do you think you were really looking for? Please share this video, like, subscribe if you have not subscribed as yet. And I thank you once again for being with me here today. Please remember, being quiet doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you choose your words with intention. Stay muted and stay mighty.